The market square bustled with merchants shouting their wares, exotic spices perfuming the air, and the metallic clang of coins exchanging hands. Lyra navigated through the crowd, her brown eyes scanning the vendors for a suitable meal after an exhausting journey. The Intergalactic Bazaar was a chaotic blend of creatures from all corners of the galaxy, and as one of the few humans on this planet, she did her best to keep her head down. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. A large, towering alien with silver skin and glowing golden eyes was approaching at an alarming pace. He was clad in regal armor, his presence commanding instant attention. Lyra barely had time to react before another figure, masked and cloaked, lunged at the alien with a dagger poised for a fatal strike. Acting on instinct, Lyra shoved the silver-skinned alien aside, catching his arm to steady him. The moment her hand touched him, a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The assassin was immediately tackled by guards, but Lyra barely registered the commotion, because the golden-eyed alien was staring at her in absolute horror. "You!" His deep voice trembled with shock, his imposing frame rigid. "You laid hands on me." Lyra's brow furrowed. "Ah, you're welcome." The murmurs in the market grew into a roar. People backed away as if she had committed an unspeakable crime. The guards surrounded her in an instant, their weapons drawn. What's going on?" Lyra asked, alarmed. The alien she had saved took a step closer, his glowing eyes narrowing. "By the laws of my people, you have claimed me as your mate." Lyra blinked. "I did what?" The alien exhaled sharply, his expression torn between outrage and resignation. "You touched me, a Zelvari noble in an unbonded state. The law is clear. You must now take responsibility and be my mate." A bead of sweat trickled down Lyra's back. "Listen, buddy, I was just saving your life. I'm not looking to get married." "I am not either," the alien growled, but his gaze softened as he regarded her. "However, my people will not allow an unclaimed bond to exist. If we do not complete the ritual, you will be executed." Lyra paled. "That seems a bit extreme." "That is the law," he said grimly. Then he extended his clawed hand. "My name is Prince Kale Threx, and I believe you are now my betrothed." Lyra sat stiffly on an ornate couch in Kale's grand palace, still trying to process the insanity of her situation. The moment they had arrived at his estate, royal officials had begun preparations for their bonding ceremony. She was given a lavish chamber, attendants fussing over her like she was some kind of honored guest, except she was more like an unwilling prisoner. Kale stood by the window, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "You do not seem pleased." Lyra scoffed. "Gee, I wonder why. I accidentally claimed an alien prince, and now I have to marry you or die. Real fair deal." His golden eyes darkened. "You insult my customs." "No, your customs insult me," Lyra snapped. "Do I get any say in this?" Kale exhaled slowly, clearly restraining his temper. "There may be a loophole," he admitted. "If I were to formally release you from the bond before the ceremony, you could walk away." Lyra brightened. "Great. Let's do that." He hesitated. "However, if I release you, my people will see it as a dishonor. My claim to the throne would be challenged." Lyra groaned. "So if we don't marry, I die. But if we break it off, you lose everything." Kale nodded. "That is correct." Lyra ran a hand through her hair, frustrated beyond belief. "There has to be another way." Kale regarded her carefully. "If we were to proceed with the ceremony but never consummate the bond, we could stage an eventual, amicable separation. You would be free in time, and I would retain my position. Lyra mulled over the proposal. A fake marriage to avoid execution. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than the alternatives. She exhaled. Fine. We do it your way. But no funny business. A flicker of amusement passed through Cale's gaze. I would not dream of it, little human. The bonding ceremony was an extravagant affair, with thousands of Zelvari nobles attending. Lyra barely understood the alien rituals, but she followed Cale's lead, exchanging sacred vows in a language she had barely learned. When he placed his hands over hers, a soft golden light enveloped them, sealing their bond in the eyes of his people. And just like that, Lyra was a princess. The weeks that followed were surprisingly tolerable. Cale was reserved but treated her with unexpected kindness. Despite their awkward start, they formed a truce, coexisting in the palace with relative peace. Lyra learned about his culture, and Cale, in turn, seemed genuinely interested in her human ways. But things changed when an uprising threatened Cale's reign. Rivals accused him of forging a false bond, and the only way to silence them was to prove their union was real. We must convince them, Cale said one night as they sat in their shared chambers. If they suspect we are not truly bonded, they will challenge my rule. Lyra frowned. How do we convince them? Cale hesitated before answering. We must act as true mates. Publicly. Lyra swallowed. You mean? He nodded. Affection, proximity, and a display of trust. Lyra's heart pounded. Despite their arrangement, she couldn't deny the growing tension between them. Cale, despite his stern demeanor, had shown her nothing but respect. And, perhaps more dangerously, she was beginning to like him. What started as simple hand-holding escalated into lingering touches, a protective arm around her waist. And finally, one night, when the pressure was unbearable, Cale whispered, "Would it be so terrible if this was real?" Lyra's breath hitched as he cupped her face. The truth crashed over her like a tidal wave. She didn't want to leave. She didn't want to lose him. Their lips met, and the bond they had once faked became undeniably real. Months later, as they stood before their people once more, Lyra realized something profound. She had saved Cale that day in the market. But in the end he had saved her too. From loneliness, from a life of wandering, from never knowing what it meant to belong. "You are my mate," Cale murmured against her forehead. "By law and by choice." Lyra smiled, her heart full. "By choice.